Bandstand Convention Hall Special Events Committee meeting of the year 2020 to order. In terms of roll call, all members of the committee are present with the exception of Richard Green. The first thing we would like to take care of today is the approval of the minutes for our meeting held on November 21st, 2019. And thank you, Steve, very much for getting those out to everybody.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I'd like to know if there's any questions or discussion regarding those minutes. Okay, if not, okay. So I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes of November 21st. Okay, and we have a movement, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a move and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes of November 21st, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then the minutes of November 21st, 2019 have been approved by unanimous vote of the quorum today. I don't believe, Ann, there's no correspondence today for this committee, so let's go ahead right into old business. And the first item on this is the update on convention center revenue and bookings. Let's go ahead and hear from Mr. Perry.
Stephen Perry, City of Rehoboth. I just did a quick add on my spreadsheet that I've been keeping. Right now we have already $90,050 in bookings for 2020. So almost everyone to a person that came last year is coming back. We've got a few new groups, so looks like it's going to be a great year.
Wow. What did we end 2019 at?
About 93.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And what was the year before again, just off the top of your head? I want to say it was 80.
Not off the top of my head, but it was 86,000.
Wow, that's even better than off the top of your head.
It's going to be definitely bigger than last year.
Okay,
It's a good trend.
that's a very good trend. Okay,
And right now we have about 15 weddings booked as well. I was not on, sorry. And last year about this time we had 10. So that looks like it's doing well.
how many do we have booked, did you say?
We have 15 weddings so far
great.
this year. And last year at the same time we had 10. So again, that's looking good.
Oh, great, okay. 2020 and then 2019. Okay, super. Well,
good.
thanks for the update. Any questions for Stephen on bookings or anything? Okay, super. All right, great update. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about on the agenda is the discussion for the convention center briefing. And let me just give just a tad bit of background on this. One of the things that this committee has been focused on is, what is the current, what is the future of the convention center, and what do we want the convention center to be here in Rehoboth Beach? We want it to be simply a community hall where we do local events and nonprofits. Do we want to expand it to something bigger? Do we want it to be kind of a hybrid? So we asked a couple folks, Kyle and Richard Green, to look at this and make some recommendations to this group and then to the full Board of Commissioners on, based on their meetings with different stakeholders, where should we be thinking about the convention center being in the long term? And then what are some of the steps we want to take in the short term for continuous improvement of the convention center based, again, on the feedback from stakeholders, attendees, et cetera. Kyle and Richard have been meeting with many stakeholders across the town. I think Stephen did a survey of some of the folks that used the convention center over the past year or so, provided that input. I know you've talked to, I think, the chamber, the hotels. And so there's some initial findings that Kyle's going to brief us on, mostly economic impact of the convention center. And then again, he and Richard are putting together a briefing for the full board on what some proposed ideas for the long-term plan are, and then what are some interim things we can be doing to enhance the hospitality and safety, or excuse me, and such and the revenue of the convention center. So with that as the background, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to Kyle. And Kyle, was there enough copies of this by any chance for the audience? Or I know you just, that's fine. I know you're out of town.
I just flew in last night and got home, just printed them out really quickly.
Fine.
So
no problem. So just talk us through what Kyle has, and we'll make sure we have this for the record, of course. But in fact, Ann just left. I'd like to get a couple more copies of this. I think it would
Okay.
be better. Do you mind? Yeah, if you could. So while he begins, just for
I can
folks.
talk. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Richard is unable to be here today. He's held up in DC. So, but yeah, we've had a significant amount of meetings with chamber and hotel stakeholders and part of the city as well. Some of the things we basically, over looking at all this stuff, I realized how much of a great thing the convention center actually is and how much it can be utilized. We're already doing great things with it, but I think we can do a little more in certain aspects. One of the biggest things with the hotels we were talking about, I think one of the most beneficial things that I personally think, and I think Richard is with me on this, is maybe putting together a sort of calendar of events with what's actually happening in the convention center that can be given to the hotels as well, so that way they can actually utilize their booking agents to kind of fill in the cracks, the things that don't necessarily get booked. I think that's one of the biggest things, and Richard has a lot more to go off of that as well. But I think that, you know, we're already booking a great amount of events. I think the convention center itself too lends itself to be a very big community center. I think that Richard and I also believe, and that seems to be the standpoint of most everybody also as well, thinks that it's a really big heart of the community. And that's where I kind of took into some data basically and did all the numbers work and stuff like that and kind of came up with some conservative economic impacts and projected kind of incomes that the convention center brings in. I think that's kind of, I basically took some of the stuff here. So I took sorry, I'm looking at my iPad here. The total building and grounds expenses, and I kind of figured that the convention center was about 40% of that, since obviously there's more to the building and grounds than just the convention center, and kind of went off that number, and then took the amount of chairs per an event. So I think in 2019, we were at about 21,355 chairs sat at the events total. So off of that, I took a conservative amount of saying that if only 50% of those chairs were actually sat, you know, saying that 50% of the events chairs were sat, and then use the chamber's numbers that you've utilized for whether people have stayed overnight or just showing up through the day for economic impact, and essentially came to a very conservative number of 1.6 million, 1625 of economic impact brought into the area. So essentially that's just, if somebody comes in and they go to see an event and they spend $100 is what the chamber's numbers were, which the research that you did, thank you, Karen, per a day in town. And then there's also $200 per a day if they were to stay overnight, which is also a pretty conservative number considering hotel prices in the area. So I think that even though I think we're running at, where is it? The total revenue in 2019 I had from meeting with the financial, I think it was the city financial manager, it was 104,123. I'm assuming that's possibly also revenue taken in for deposits. And then going off of that, the total expenses were 159,850, which was a net loss of 55,727. And then I compared that to the local areas like the Ocean City Convention Center, and that we had a expense coverage ratio of 65%, and the Ocean City Convention Center runs off a 39% ratio, so they're a lot lower, if that makes sense. So I know we're not dollars to dollars compared to Ocean City Convention Center, the larger convention center, but percentage-wise, we're kind of doing very well.
I'm sorry, wait, Ocean City's 39%?
Yeah, Ocean City is 39%, and I think that was the year 2017, I think is what the year was off of.
And Rehoboth was what?
It was 65%. So we claimed 65% of our expenses, so we covered those.
Oh, covered them.
Yeah, we covered, it's expense ratio coverage.
Oh, got it,
Yeah.
got it.
So Ocean City Convention Center only covered 39%. The average in the area for convention centers is 58%. So we're doing better at covering our coverage there. So, and that was with the conservative indirect spending in the area. And I went, basically, it was saying that if 50% of the bookings were sat, and then only 50% of those people actually stayed around. So it was a very, very, very conservative. I don't think you could go any less conservative than that, honestly.
Awesome. Wow, okay.
Richard will do a better job at explaining that too. I'm not as good with
That's
that.
okay.
I like the numbers, but
Yeah, no, I think the data is really important as a basis for this, and the thing that strikes out to strikes me is the 1.625 million in economic impact, and that's to the restaurants, to the
Yep.
hotels. So basically, that's what.
yeah, and there's some other data in there too. It says, for 160 visitors, it supports a full-time Delaware job. So I think that's pretty, 160 visitors per event, that is one event, a small event, really. So, when you're looking at the convention center as a whole, the money spent on it might look like a loss, but at the same time, most all convention centers run off of losses. That's why a lot of them are actually, money is put into them through the state governments because they are providing so much money to the actual economic area.
I would also look at it if the overall economic impact, thanks a lot, Stephen, is 1.625. You can help me with the correct financial term to say this, is the economic impact, and we're operating at about a 55K per year loss. If they say 56 rounded up. So that's about a 1.5, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 really overall that we're bringing in.
Oh,
in
actually,
terms of
sorry,
economic.
I misquoted myself. Actually, yeah, so it was a 1.601. So yeah, so the total would have been, the total indirect net is 1.54.
Oh.
Yeah, or sorry, 1,545,898.
Okay, all right, well, that's pretty impressive. Okay, all right, did you actually do any kind of and trust me, this is outstanding work, and I'll talk for just a minute, and I'd love to get some reactions from the group up here while, first, did you get a copy, did everybody get a copy of this? Okay, if everybody gets a chance just to look this over real quickly, and also the commissioners, or excuse me, the committee members. Did you do any kind of forecasting at all, or off the top of your head? Like, so if we were able to, one of the things I think is really important for this group is when we laid out the scope of kind of what you and Richard were going to be doing, or marching forward with, we really were focusing on the off season. And filling the seats during the off season. We have a lot of open weekends, a lot of open weekdays.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we really were thinking about or focused on was, kind of filling those
the open
gaps.
holes.
So did you go through any kind of forecasting on, if we were able to, what that would do for the economic impact numbers?
I
don't mean to put you on the spot,
No,
because
yeah.
we didn't ask for that in this first round. I was just wondering if you had
I
any
did.
thoughts.
I was hesitant to put something down because there's a lot of variables. So I can put something together. There's still a lot of variables. It also depends on, I think, if we do get a situation where we can get the hotels to fill in those open dates, and then also work on some of the hourly rates for the nonprofits and stuff like that of that nature to fill in some sort of the community events. I think with the community events we could get a significant amount more of groups of people in there, and that would bring, especially in the off season, I think that would be an incredible amount of people are going to come in the off season, especially when there's a lot of parking available, and they're going to go to the restaurants and stuff of that nature. So
That's great.
you can definitely put something together. It's going to be kind of it's hard to figure out what exactly the number would be without.
Yeah, no,
There's a lot of
absolutely.
variables. So
Absolutely. No, in any kind of analysis like this, at any level,
Yeah.
Fortune 500 companies, whatever,
take some
you take
assumption,
some
yeah,
assumptions. I mean, that's just what you do. And I think you did a really outstanding job, a lot for us to think about here. I'd like to get any kind of feedback from the committee members here on the work that Kyle's done so far, and any observations at this point.
Terrific work. Really. I've always used per capita rather than chairs.
Per capita?
Yeah. Now, are there events where people were there, but there were no chairs?
Yes, there were, but there was not many though. It was, I believe, it's under the chair count. I'm pretty sure, because this is if I'm wrong, Steve, this is the chair, though I got this from you, so this is what they requested at the event, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They always request a few chairs.
Yeah.
The only ones that really have no chairs are like
The,
dances.
yeah, there's, I think on the list there was 2, correct? There's just, yeah.
And my second question is, how comfortable are you with the breakout between convention center and building and grounds?
In the percentage of 40%,
You've used a 40%.
fairly, it was given to me as a whole, more or less, so,
I mean, some
yeah.
of these expenses are obviously just convention,
just direct convention, yeah.
but, you know.
It's hard to tell, yeah,
start
it's-
somewhere. and
yeah.
I think that, I just want to question how comfortable, because that's the key to whole.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
whole thing. How much is the city burying in the convention center? And that, if it's not out in the open, it's going to impact every decision the
Absolutely.
city makes.
Yeah, I think, well, that's why even too, with my math here, I even did it on 100% too at the end, if you see. Where is it? At the very end, I did it on 100% too, just to give you an idea, and you still come in with a net, indirect net of 1.306123. So that's even if you accounted for all the expenses being covered. So that's, I think it's somewhere around 40 and 50%. I think that's what the financial manager as well believed. I think that's pretty accurate, because it's hard to tell where, you know, for some things, like a few things on here, I don't think they would use it all. So it's hard to tell. But yeah, it's just, that was my assumption of it.
I mean, the whole thing hinges on how much are actual convention center expenses.
Absolutely.
Well, sort of, but I think what you're saying is even say you looked at the economic impact of the
Yeah.
convention center and built and said, okay, well, the total expenses for building and grounds 4 million, or excuse me, 400K.
Yeah.
You're still going to get an overall economic
Yeah,
impact.
you're still getting economic
So
impact.
worst case of the expenses, say,
The economic impact's there, that has no
Yeah.
impact. It's how you on the council make your decisions. Right now, because tourism is not that much an emphasis, the economic impact until you got the tax on lodging, that's your first, other than parking meters, that's your first direct impact from visitors. Whereas other communities have a sales tax, and that's a dramatic impact. So all these other comparables, they have a sales tax and a bed tax, which impacts their decision. You don't, so that impacts your decision.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. It is hard to tell exactly without looking into it. I would have to delve very, very far. It'd be very hard to figure out a lot of stuff too. It's not, you don't really know where it's actually, you know, the electric bill as a whole, for instance, is going to be for the whole building. But yeah, it's, I mean, even at 100%, even at 100% of the total expenses, you're still looking at, was it 65% of your expense coverage ratio, when the average is about 58. So it's not far off. So even if you looked at, I would say it's like, you know, 80%, then that's pretty much average. So say it's 20% over at the point, if that's at 100%.
My only other concern is a nonprofit event, which would be primarily local, would not have the same economic impact. And you've melded them together.
Yeah, I only went off the data that I had from Southern Delaware, and I looked at it. I mean, so I have a little chart down here too. It says that, you know, 20% of the people that are here are day trippers. So that's the 20%. So yeah, I guess the nonprofits typically would be, but not necessarily always. There's a few nonprofits that people come from significant distances for. You know, like the Buddy Walks one, I'm sure, and there's a bunch of other ones. But
Now, this is terrific and a terrific start. I mean, we've got to get zip codes. like Tanger does, you know, of
where people are coming from, yeah. That's the more data you have, the more you can really directly, I only have so much that I could find, so, but yeah, it's exactly what you say, it's hard to, there are definitely some assumptions, obviously, so.
I've just seen a recent study for a major project in Sussex County that goes into all of this. And you might be interested in knowing they list 9 hotels, 9 new hotels.
Well, this is outstanding.
Thank
And
you.
you know, and again, you know, you have to make some assumptions. You made those assumptions based on the data you have, and I think this is a really good, good bit of work. And Steve, you were going to say something.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, you know, I am in awe of the work that went into this. It's a great start. But I think we kind of have to look at where we are today. And Kyle, you even covered in some of your comments, is that, you know, we're pretty much at a high percentage of capacity for bookings. And Stephen Perry just provided an update that we're like way ahead as far as 2020 bookings. So I'm just, and we've had conversations about kind of the broader opinion and view of what the purpose of the convention center community hall is. So I think we just have to be a little bit careful as we look at the potential based on the reality.
Well, I think let me clarify, for my own purposes, one thing. There's a high capacity, there's a high number of bookings, but those bookings are primarily during like
Peak season.
just
Yeah,
peak
yeah.
season.
There's
So
still some room for
Yeah.
improvement. And that's where it kind of Richard and I wish he was here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
He's really gone into that aspect of it. I kind
yeah.
of just focused a lot on the numbers. So, but I think, yeah, that's where that really filling in those extra kind of dates and also utilizing it as a community center and really focusing on that aspect of getting the community in here more too. Because I think that there's a lot of economic impact from community. You know, there's a lot of people that would like to come in town and go to an event and go to dinner and spend money. You know, if they I think they would do so.
Well, and I really am encouraged by the fact that, you know, now we can use data like this to develop a strategy rather than just have it be that we're reactive to people who show an interest in using this facility. So that really kind of gives us a motivation, I think, to make it more of a strategic endeavor than to just have it be, you know, just responding to inquiries.
Yeah, that's why I enjoy the numbers. I like the numbers to think to try and forecast some things.
That's actually a really, really valid point, Steve. That is the whole point of the numbers, is to use those to develop the strategy to go forward. So, because one of the things we're always doing is looking for ways to increase the economic impact of our investments. Which, this being said, what's your take now on? I know you're still in the process of talking to folks and developing the long-term strategy or the longer-term strategy. What are some of the kind of short-term recommendations based on all this feedback and the numbers? Anything, you know, that's particularly relevant to our budget discussions?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest relevancy to the budget, I think, is the chairs, which is still a working situation. I believe when I was gone, there was the chairs that were being looked at were shown, and I don't know if there was some sort of, if they were looking for a higher quality chair, or I kind of missed that. I don't know if that's why I'm not sure.
I'd like to hear from the city manager and in terms of what was the
I thought the
thought
chairs
process
that were
on the
pretty
two
good,
chairs
but
that were
yeah.
brought up, and kind of what's the thoughts on, are they a high quality?
The $63 chair, I believe, was a comfy chair. It was significantly comfier than it looked, for sure. It was
the
very
black one, the black mesh.
Yeah.
Were those the only two chairs that were looked at, or, I mean, were there other options? Because I think what was interesting, some of the feedback that I got was that, well, geez, if we go with a nicer, plusher, more comfortable chair, there won't be enough room for storage. So I'm not asking you to get into every minute, any detail, but, you know, but if I look at this, and so we were saying, boy, all we can store is, I don't know, what was it, Steve? Do you remember, like 400 or 500?
Yeah, I think it was, you know, and this was done through measuring the chairs and measuring the storage area. I think it was between like 300 and 400 were the maximum number that could be
Yeah, and if you
stored.
look at this, the average request for the number of seats is 368, so
What's the capacity?
I thought that was
900? Yeah.
And how many chairs do we have now?
We have approximately 1,000 chairs.
What's your thoughts, Sharon, on, you know, kind of pursuing the chairs, the pros and the cons, just anything off the top of your head with this particular investment?
Yeah, so chairs are a topic that I'm familiar with in my travels and community centers and also other places. And if you can just wait a couple of seconds, we're going to have a sample of that chair for you to look at. So what we did here is we contacted our subcontractor for furniture here in the city when we built the new complex here about 2.5 years ago. And so we had a contact, we have state contract pricing, and we were able to get these two chairs for us to sit in and look at. The chair on the maroon colored chair is more like what we have now with a little more padding on the back and the seat. The black mesh type chair is a newer style and was preferred and actually more comfortable for a long period of time than the maroon colored chair. The cost of the black mesh chair is approximately, for those 900 chairs, is approximately $77,000. And as mentioned previously, the area where we now contain the chairs and store them on racks, that would only accommodate about 350 chairs. So,
black
of the black ones, yes.
That much bigger to store than the current convention center?
Different style, a little larger, and then there's always the, you know, is new the best? Will these hold up 30 years or more like the chairs that we have now? That's, you know, the unknown. So these are the two chairs that we took a look at, not the more stadium seating type chairs that Commissioner Schlosser, you had
It was
sent
just
to
an
me.
idea, but I don't even, it's just one idea that was floated around, so, I'm sorry, how many of those can we store, did you say? The black ones?
Approximately 77,000,
No, I'm sorry, how many of them can we store, the black ones?
about 350.
350. Okay, huh, interesting.
And I did sit in them. The black ones are, it looks like the maroon one would be more comfortable, but the black one is actually more comfortable. So-
No, I've done the seat test, and you're absolutely right.
Which one?
The black one is more comfortable than the one with the heavier cushioning.
Weight-wise?
Weight-wise,
Which is lighter, which is,
the black mesh is lighter.
Yeah,
but it's more comfortable.
yeah.
Is there a weight limit on the black one for, maybe what?
1,000 pounds.
1,000.
Yeah.
Stephen actually sat in the chair a couple of days
Yeah.
to try it out.
What do you think, Sharon, based on your experience as well? One of the recommendations, I think Carol made it and others, is that instead of kind of buying new chairs, maybe we just, you know, include rental of these maybe higher end chairs for certain events and have them pay for the rental. What are your thoughts just based on kind of running these kind of things before?
Yeah, so that's, you know, interesting, and I think that's a valid point that we could look at. We're still looking into the rental of the chairs. But for big entertainment type events that we have, especially like Judy Collins that we had, or you know, a big performer where you need those 1,000 chairs, it's best for setup and takedown to be able to do whatever is practical and easier for the staff who work there. And the size of the chair, certainly. So for those types of events that we have maybe 6 to 8 times a year, it would probably be, and I don't know this yet, but maybe more cost effective to just rent the chairs, or rent 300 of them and have preferred seating, and build that cost into the ticket price. The rest of the time, we have a lot of movement in the convention center. So we have shows, we have walk-around venue type events, we have workshops. Not everyone needs 900 chairs at all times. Actually, that's not usually the case.
I think that's a good
That's a really good
decision. My concern is numbering. In other words, you don't have numbers on these chairs. And I don't know, you use hand lettered or stickers, you do something with your chairs when you sell a specific ticket.
Like you don't get
A row and a seat.
3A, you know.
How do
Okay.
you do it now?
It's either preferred seating in many cases.
In row numbers and seat numbers.
Yeah, they're put up with a very crude way, so piece of paper or
That's my
something like
point.
that.
We can have some way there incorporated in the chairs. It makes us look more professional.
Mm-hmm.
That's worth looking at for sure. This preferred seating is intriguing to me, actually. So when you say there's enough room for storage of 350 or so of, say, the nicer black chairs, does that include keeping the old chairs, or is that getting rid of the old chairs and then there's just room for 350 of the new chairs?
Yeah, so we have a storage area right incorporated into the convention center off to the side where the overhead garage door is. That's where the chairs are stored. So that area would only contain approximately 350 chairs in the racks. So the racks are movable on wheels. The remaining 550 chairs would have to be stored somewhere, maybe on the side of the side walls or in other rooms that wouldn't be used, but it would be a cumbersome process. If you had 900 chairs, only stored 350. Right now they're stackable. They're on these racks that the staff moves around constantly.
But you have the 900.
Yes.
The other thing I would say too is this that was the one thing that concerned me, and I'm not sure what the actual measurements of the chairs that are currently in there, but that one, the black one, is 2 inches wider, if I do recall.
Yeah.
And while it doesn't seem like a lot, 350 chairs, it's 58 feet of difference.
Funny.
So that's 58 feet of seats that you won't have. So that's I don't know what the width of the chair is, but that's a significant amount of seats.
But the average is still just, is
Shy of that, yeah.
368, so, I mean, of requested chairs, people, so you could theoretically, if we wanted to go with something like that, you could have 350 of those.
Still
and
theoretically
then
would
rent.
fit the bill, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like we've exhausted all options for storage of the chairs? Like, I mean, I think about the second floor of the fire hall not being used right now, I think. Does that add too much to the hassle, or?
To move the chairs to the second, that would be a labor-intensive process, and, certainly have to get the permission from the fire department, yeah.
I really am liking that preferred seating idea. I think that solves some of the issues with.
Yeah,
It gives people who rent the venue some options for getting higher ticket prices.
right, and again, if we look at, there's a couple points that I'd like to make. One is that even though the black chair is more comfortable, after, if you're at a concert that's a 2-hour concert that doesn't really have an intermission, I don't care what kind of chair you have, you're going to start to feel a little uncomfortable. And so I think we have to, that's a real fact that needs to be taken into consideration. I think so The second thing is, so we do have existing chairs that, that are still usable. So I would lean more toward what Commissioner Schlosser's mentioned is possibly to give people who want to use the venue a option to have preferred seating or whatever, and then have, based on the research that we do, some type of data that we could provide to them on what they might need to add into those preferred seating ticket prices to offset the cost of rental if we decide to, if what the city manager said is a possibility, then that's maybe where, you know, some of the more comfort can come into place. I'm just a little bit apprehensive about investing $77,000 in a much smaller number of chairs that isn't going to have a tremendous long-term benefit. And so I think that's, and I'm surprised that I'm saying that, but I think the fact that the city was able to go out and get samples to be tested, and I could do my own seat test, kind of demonstrated to me that it's not a simple issue to try to resolve.
Was any thought given to refurbishing some of the existing chairs?
Not really. I mean, the chairs are pretty beat up as far as, you know, how they look in appearance. They're old chairs, but they've certainly, you know, provided a useful purpose over the years. So the answer is no.
Would, but that begs a question to me is if, just based on what you said, is that, you know, they're on the older end of the age spectrum. If we were really looking seriously into replacing the chairs, what, do we know what the cost would be to replace them with like-kind chairs?
Well, this would be a like-kind chair.
Okay.
And this was approximately 40% less. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
But again, then you run into the storage issue and the out-of-pocket expense issue.
correct. This is the modern version of what we have now.
Oh, okay, okay.
But it looks
That's
to
not
me
very
like you could
comfortable.
replace the back and the seat and paint the frame. I'm just saying for a price comparison.
Certainly, we could look into that.
I don't think the price is the issue. To me, it's the storage.
Yeah.
Price is always an issue, don't get me wrong. But I think right now the issue is the storage issue. So let me go back to that question. Do you think we've exhausted all, options for storage? Like, is there any other options maybe we haven't thought of, or can we go back and look, or do you feel like, yes, I've exhausted all the
Well,
options?
I know, Commissioner, that you like to exhaust everything and drill down to what we can do. And, you know, we have thought outside the box of maybe having a pod outside and putting it there. That's not really practical here. Our space is so tight, we would lose parking. There's no real room in the driveway where the dumpster is. We need access to that at all times. And it depends on how the convention center is being used. So sometimes we have an event where all of the conference rooms are used at the same time. We could store chairs in there, but if we had an event, we'd have to move them out and rearrange. So, you know, the possibility of storing more than 350 chairs, sure, we could do that. We could make room for them somewhere, but at some point, those rooms and those other areas would have to be used.
I'm confused, but you can store 900 now.
They're smaller chairs.
Yeah, smaller.
And
they can,
again, it's,
Done the calculation.
each type of chair has its own unique
Right,
rack
but-
system.
But seems to me to cut it by a third doesn't compute. I mean, there's got to be some chairs that'll fit in the current space more than 300.
So the chairs that you're looking at now are the ones that were utilized for those measurements. We had an engineer look at it. Mayor Coons actually took some measurements with Commissioner Sheffer and looked at it. Um, and of course the vendor themselves did their own measurements.
And it's that space was not specifically designed for chair storage. You know, that's just kind of where they ended up because it was the most logical spot, is what I'm guessing. And so, you know, we are what we are with this, but I think what this conversation has generated with me is that the facts are that we have our existing chairs are old and are showing the wear and tear of being old chairs. We have identified comparable replacements, and we recognize that because of the configuration of the chair, the space it takes up, that we have challenges on storage. So my question is, at a minimum, what we have to look at is how many more years do we think we can get out of the existing chairs, and what would be the plan to, as painlessly as possible, to replace the chairs that we have. Not just to replace them because it'd be a nice to have, and I think we've already proven that the comfort level doesn't really justify the price. So it has to be just the safety issues and the facts that things eventually have to be replaced. And so at a minimum, I'd be looking to see what the plan is to do it based on the normal life cycle of the chairs and the identification of the comparable chairs as replacement chairs. Assuming that, you know, the decision is made justly not to replace the chairs this coming year. Does that make sense?
Have they reached the end of their life cycle, right? Have they, do you think?
You know, I don't think so. They're still usable. They bring out the best chairs for the events.
Yes.
You know, they have them in sequence, some kind of order where, you know, the staff knows which are the better ones. Not that they're unsafe, but which ones look better. And, you know, because not all of the chairs are used over the past 25, 30 years at one time. It's very, you know, seldom are all the chairs used.
Yeah. Well, like you
So-
said, we have 1,000 chairs and the capacity's 900. So.
Yeah. So possibly could get another 5 years out of them.
Okay. No, that's good to know. I think because ultimately, yeah, independent of what immediate decisions are made based on recommendations from this committee, there will need to be a plan of a logical replacement of the chairs and a need to replace them with something that is like the black mesh chair.
You both got me thinking on something, and again, there's so many things we spend time talking about. I never thought in my life I'd be spending so much time talking about, like chairs, for example, but I wonder if maybe the short-term strategy is to, say, buy 100 of these nicer chairs, you know, and to replace some of the older broken chairs and use those 100 for premium seating. To make that offer. So we have premium seating available but we still have, so we get rid of 100 of or 200 of the 900 chairs and replace them with the black chairs.
And then there's a time-phased approach for
the
replacing all the
time-phased.
chairs.
Yeah. And then if somebody comes in and says, well, we really want all of our chairs to be like that, then they can rent them, you know. So
Yeah, I
maybe
mean, I
there's
think
a
one of the
hybrid.
challenges to that is like everything else in our world today, things change so rapidly. And so if we had a plan, you know, is that same chair going to be available in 5 years? I just don't know. And so I don't know, and how long do you wait, you know, to replace the chairs? I mean, I think it's, no crystal ball is clearer than anybody else's, but I was encouraged by what the city manager said as far as, you know, it's not a safety issue. I misspoke about that. But it is, there are other factors that come into play is what the life expectancy is of the existing chairs that we have. And eventually, there's going to need to be a change, a need to make a change. So what is the best strategy to do that? And maybe it's a time-phased approach, so that there's incremental buys.
Or could it possibly, I assume there's companies that rent premium chairs. We kind of get the best use out of the chairs we currently have. And if someone wants a premium seat, go to those companies and then either they deal directly with them or we deal with them.
Well,
and add
that's kind
cost to it, yeah.
of, that's kind of where I was headed is to, in that way, I know it takes time, but you're even, say you rent 200 chairs for premium seating or whatever you want to call it, for those 6 to 8 major events that occurred throughout the course of the year. And then you're down to still the best in breed of the remaining chairs. And so you're able to kind of call out the ones that, might not be as, look as good or show a little bit more wear and tear than the rest. And so over time, or you get down to the right number that maybe could last 10 years. And then you're looking at renting, 200 chairs or whatever for the premium seating. I think there's options. And again, I mean, you could spend 2 years trying to figure it out and get nothing else done. But I think that this definitely justifies a little bit more consideration based on the current age of the chairs and the feedback that we've received as far as the comfort level of the chairs, and then work with the city manager and her team, our committee can, on what's the best, or just to support, just be informed of what the city's doing and make recommendations as we see fit.
What was the 77 to replace all of them as a whole, or was it just the 350? All of them as a whole. Okay, because I believe it was $63 a chair is the number I remember, if that sounds right. Yeah, so that's, if you were to purchase a smaller amount too, that's a difference too. 77,000 is all of the chairs, so.
So you could do a hybrid, kind of like get rid of, I don't know, what is it, 1 to 3 or something like that? So you could get rid of,
Yeah, 350 chairs would cost, it's $63, would cost around 22,000, I think it is now. 22, yeah.
So is the next step to just, with the discussion that we've had today, ask the city manager and her team to kind of look into what they believe the best solution is, from just, having a plan for the existing chairs and looking into the other options without spending too much time doing it.
I think that is it, but I'd like, and correct me, but I'd love to just see, like what a recommendation might be on having, to your point, I mean, to me, 20,000 to buy, or whatever, to buy 100 of those and get rid of 200 of the old chairs or something.
I could also do some research on
yeah.
the return on your investment too.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
that'd be
obviously, you don't want to just
super.
purchase chairs just to purchase chairs.
Right,
but I can
right, and
figure it out,
that's the point. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the initial, the genesis of this conversation was feedback that we received kind of anecdotally on the comfort level. And that kind of caused us to look at what the options were. And I think we have a much more realistic perspective of what that all means now than we did 6 months ago. And so now it's, kind of looking at the, and you've demonstrated that data can really help inform us much better. What recommendations can we make based on a cost-benefit analysis to advise the city manager and her team on what they can take under advisement in making decisions that they believe are best for the city.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense, but I'll absorb it. So that sounds about right. Hey, thanks for your work, and we'll look forward to your full presentation
Absolutely.
with the strategy and the numbers on Friday.
All right, sounds
Okay,
good.
super. And thanks, Sharon, for getting up ad hoc and talking us through that. That was great. All right, so any other comments or questions on that? Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is new business, and in terms of the new business, we're going to talk about scheduling of the convention center and the impact impacts over the next year that we should take into account for the strategy. And given one of the topic areas, I'm going to recuse myself and ask Commissioner Sheffer to take over the meeting at this point, and just let me know when you're done on this topic. Okay, Steve?
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, oh, please.
Good morning. Happy New Year. We wanted to bring forward to you, just for your information, that the city's been working collaboratively with Clear Space Theater Company for, I'd say, approximately 1 year in providing Clear Space the rental of the convention center should they not continue with their lease at their present location. So that was the question that was brought to me by Mr. Paulson approximately 1 year ago. And my answer to that question was certainly the city would look at working collaboratively with you. This is a very important community venue. It impacts not only our economic development, but several factors in our community. It's a very, very important effect of art and culture that we have in our community. So we took a look at that. Obviously, Stephen Perry is the staff person that schedules the convention center use. And then as we were looking into that, it became clear that Clear Space would indeed be out of their current venue at the end of December 31st, 2020. So we took a harder look at that. Stephen virtually spent hours of his time trying to determine who would be coming back. Of course, this is in 2019 when he was doing this. So who would be coming back and returning in 2021? And actually, that's not, we've had over the years our regular customers and renters of the convention center space. So Stephen can explain that to you and what he has done, but he certainly spent many hours in trying to get this together to work for Clear Space. And we've come up with an agreement that for starting in January of 2021 for the entire year that we think is fair and would provide Clear Space the venue to have practices, to have other educational services that they might provide, and for their performances. So, Stephen, if you want to explain just a bit about how you were able to do the yeoman's job of figuring out who would be coming back and what space might be available.
Just briefly, I just went to all our returning customers. Right now, we have a set of customers that come back year after year since I've been doing this, and just tried to lock down their 2021 dates. It was a little tricky because I usually only do things about a year in advance, so it was kind of jumping over 2020, kind of confused a lot of people, but we got their 2021 dates locked down. And in the meantime, I also got their 2020 dates locked down, so it was kind of beneficial in that regard too. But we came up with a calendar that I presented to Clear Space and let them know what the availability was in 2021 and went from there.
So to me, this is positive. Clear Space would be using the convention center approximately 143 days in 2021, again, starting in January, and they would begin paying for the venue incrementally, starting with the signing of an agreement that should happen within the next week or two.
How many free days between what you've already committed and the 143 are there? Any?
Free, like open days? Oh,
I could count really quickly. Quite a few, actually. Quite a few. Let me do a real quick count.
He has a color-coded calendar. He didn't include the blank spaces.
Yeah, I mean, quite a lot.
Well,
Quite a lot.
that's my whole
Yeah.
point, is you're not, in a sense, fully booking the facility.
Correct.
And is it still the same set of facts, which are there's more open dates in the off-season?
Yes.
During the summer season, during, Sea Witch Festival, and times like that, there's much more usage. And then you have the Monday through Thursday periods where there's not solid bookings.
Yeah, just at a glance, December, January, February, March are the months that have the most open dates, and it's all during the week usually, too.
Are there any joint usage dates? Like they want it at night and somebody else wants it during the day?
No, no.
Could there be?
We haven't gotten that far into exactly how many hours they want to use it per day, but probably not. We're still in the whole
But-
day rate.
But I think back to what you originally said when you were reaching out to the repeat customers and locking down 2020, but also locking down 2021. Whatever adjustments you had to make with them, you were able to make. So you're not losing any significant bookings going from 2020 to 2021 based on the working out the 143 days and what they are with ClearSpace.
Correct.
Okay. I'm still kind of surprised that there's that many open dates, but that's not a horrible thing.
No, I think that's great. I think that supports the concept.
Yeah. I think this is a great win-win for the city to have it be a collaborative effort with ClearSpace. The community wins. ClearSpace has a home during their transition, and for me, it's a shorter walk to come see the ClearSpace performances. So that's a little selfish, but it's a nice walk to get down Baltimore Avenue, though, I must admit.
So in any case, we just wanted you to be aware of that. And again, it starts in January of 2021 and will continue throughout the year. If, additional time is needed, we can certainly work on that too.
Now, that sounds great.
Is the city going to provide anything additional than we have now, or are they kind of four-walling it, so they'll have to provide lighting, sound, whatever?
No, that's up to that's up to ClearSpace and their production company. The city will only provide staffing as we do regularly to anyone who would be renting the convention center, and not necessarily for practice periods, so just for when there's a performance.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say that kind of affects the plan too, what we were talking about. Will they be bringing their own chairs and purchasing their own chairs and things of that nature? Because it would make not much sense to invest in chairs if they're going to purchase their own chairs that can be utilized. Has that been talked about at all, or audio, visual equipment or anything of that nature?
So I think they like our chairs.
Okay.
And they're here if you'd want them to comment. Mr. Paulson is here, and the
They're an upgrade
President
from
of
the chairs they have now.
I wasn't going to go there. But they have nice intermissions between acts, so it's helpful.
And again, they would not be using all of the chairs, so.
Right.
From what I have talked about with Mr. Paulson, their setup in the convention center is pretty much going to be their setup now.
Yeah.
So that the stage and then the seating on the side and the seating in the back.
Well, that's very exciting. It'll be, it sounds great. So thank you for the update, and just let us know if there's anything else that you need us to
Okay,
look into.
very good.
Do you need anything
Oh.
formal?
Yes.
Do you need anything formal from the committee?
No, again, this is just an FYI, so you're aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wesley Paulson from ClearSpace Theater. I just wanted to go on record to thank Sharon and Steve for their hard work. It was quite a bit of a matrix to fit us in between Sea Witch and Greyhounds and figure out how we can work together to use the convention center, and we're grateful for the relationship. So I just wanted to call out and thank them for their help.
Good luck with your new location.
Okay, I'll go get Lisa. Yeah. Oh.
All right, so we'll go ahead and, oh, where's my coffee? We'll go ahead and move into the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 7, committee member comments. And the one thing I wanted to kind of talk through real quick here, I'll start, and then anybody else can jump in with topics or this particular discussion area. One of the things that we had been asked to look at, I think Chamber specifically, was hourly rates, particularly during the off-season. And we started down that path, and we realized that we actually really needed some operating guidelines or such to implement those successfully. And so I know Kyle and Richard had started down the path of looking at what those guidelines might be and making some recommendations. And then I think there's been maybe some back and forth about whether we really need these and to move forward, or should we continue moving forward with the guidelines before we actually put in place the rates. So so I wanted to open it up to the committee and have that discussion, and ask the city, Steve, Sharon left, but has there been any other rethinking about how we move forward with the hourly rates and, the need for some guidelines? So I don't know, Steve, or if you want to kind of jump
Well,
in.
no, I'm just curious as to what progress has been made as far as looking into a more formalized booking guidelines that could be helpful to the city in its efforts to have consistency and transparency in how bookings are done.
We were making some progress, kind of looking together, kind of taking guidelines from different places and kind of doing compiling. But then we've also, at the last meeting with Steve, it seemed like you said it was kind of working for you already. You didn't necessarily need guidelines. I noticed we didn't want to provide something that didn't need to be. It's not.
Right.
It takes a little bit of time to do, so we don't want to necessarily keep chugging
Right.
away if it wasn't going to be.
Right. So what's the thought? Steve, jump in, and, I mean, if we don't want to do something that we don't need.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
Well, I've always
Yeah.
maintained, I've never had anyone ask for hourly rates, ever. I mean, I don't know if, they didn't ask
Oh,
because they
that's
weren't
interesting.
there, but I've never had anyone ask for hourly rates. And I think one of the things we discussed was that it would probably be too late to implement it this year, so they were going to think of doing it for 2021. But then, since 2021 is going to be almost completely locked up for clear space in this, there'd still be some room, but maybe it would be something they would put in place for 2022. I don't know. That's something Richard brought up. He's like, well, all this work we're doing now to get it all running quickly, it's like, well, 2021, there's not going to be
Focus
a whole
on
lot of
something
need
else
for
that's more important at the
possibly,
time. Yeah.
I think Richard was
Yeah.
kind of one that made
So
that
that's, yeah,
comment.
we didn't want to continue working on something if there's
sure.
more pressing matters. So,
okay,
No,
you know,
that-
well,
obviously,
That's fine. I don't know what feedback, I mean, it was kind of, I thought it was an excellent suggestion from Carol Everhart from the Chamber, but if, I thought it would be more demand-driven. And according to what I'm hearing today, there's really not a lot of demand for it, although it was a option. And so I think what I would recommend is we continue down the path that you and Richard Green have been taking as looking at a strategy for the off-season and for the midweeks, working with the chamber and the hotel community, and look if it kind of more substantive event opportunities that could be discussed and open for consideration. So that's a lot easier for me.
great, all right.
so did I hear that, are we not following through with hourly rates at all then?
Right, because when I was more of a champion for that, it was based on the excellent questions that Stephen was asking when we were looking at hourly rates, is what does that entail? How many hours comprise a day? What other services would, like a yoga instruction class need, or any kind of whatever, smaller need there might be. And so that's what prompted me to think that, having more of a rigor in the process might be helpful. But if the consensus is that we'll continue in booking in a similar fashion that we have with daily rates, then I think it's been demonstrated, over the last couple of years that that's working fine, and there's no need to fix something that isn't broken.
Is there, I thought before that we discussed there was a demand for that sort of situation, though. I feel like if we didn't have an hourly rate, then we're gonna have to focus on more of a proactive to fill those days, which we don't have either. So we'd have to change the entire strategy almost, I guess, at that point.
Well, but I thought you and Richard were looking into kind of a strategy on what could be done and looking at potential events. I think the other thing that might be helpful, and it's come up a couple times, is to have clear guidance on parking for loading and unloading, and those kind of things where there seems to have been some confusion. And at a prior meeting, Chief Banks was talking, some of the signage was confusing to people, and I know he was looking into that with the city manager. But I do think that there are probably some things that we could work together on to add clarity and consistency on how they should be addressed. I know when the gentleman from the Rehoboth Jazz Festival Committee came and spoke to us, he was talking about, parking and could they reserve parking, those kind of things. So I think there's still some areas that we don't want to forget as we go forward that I don't think are just covered in the standard, the more daily routine booking activities. And is that a misstatement, Steve or Carol? Okay.
We can market, but we need to know what we're marketing. So I
Right.
wouldn't doubt that you're not getting requests because we're marketing a convention hall. So you don't necessarily get the reunions and those other small groups. So maybe through the work we're doing with the hotels, we can massage that a little bit and then come back to you with that. Does that make sense
That
to
would be
you?
fantastic,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
think if we do a good job of advertising legitimately what we have, and that it's it's a community hall that can also have some usage as a fairly small convention center, then maybe that demand will help us make better recommendations.
The one area that we hear that is I'm coming in for a family reunion. They may be in a hotel. The hotel doesn't have a place big enough where it's being utilized, or they may be in the independent rentals, but they want a space.
Yeah.
They're looking for a gathering area. You've got that. So I think that's in the future. I don't think it's at the top of the list, but maybe in talking to these hotels and the realtors, we might be able to fill some time for you. And that's where I thought it might be in particular, if not a small program, it might be something that the smaller group gathering needs
Right.
might fill the space.
But I have to say that I'm not going to be in town that day, but the fact that people can come here to watch the NFL playoff games is pretty neat.
Cool.
I heard that.
So I think, that doesn't fit into the kind of the smaller reunion gatherings that you talked about, but it does demonstrate that people are really thinking outside of, the norms to look for opportunities to utilize the space for a really fun event.
Okay, we'll see what we can do to help you with that.
Yeah,
Gaming
thank you.
competitions, though, will work.
Yeah. All right, cool. Okay, any other committee member comments? Okay, super. Any other citizen comments? Okay, you're part of the committee, so, all right, then, the next, let's pause on the next meeting date. Let's go through the Friday briefing and then determine what we need to do next and when we need to meet next. We have a few tasks, and I'm sure, Steve, you captured those as part of the
I
minutes.
didn't. So if
Okay.
we could
Well,
review
we'll
the
recap
tasks.
those afterwards. I have some written down, but the main thing is we do want to follow up, maybe Kyle and myself with Steve and Sharon on if we did decide to go down this premium seating route, like does it make sense to maybe buy so many chairs now for premium seating and replace some of the older worn existing chairs, or do we just make a recommendation that we rent chairs if we need premium seating, just kind of figure out what we want to do there. And that's the main thing I have. And then you guys were all on the agenda for Friday. So other than that, any final comments or anything? Okay, great. Then the meeting's adjourned at 12:11. Thank you for everybody's time. Really appreciate it.
That's really telling. Oh, yes, please.
Did you get the answer answer from Carol and everybody there?
I think so.
I think the
So-
bottom line is that if you come up as
Oh,
part
the
of the
storage
strategy
area.
and
It's
say,
probably the
look, to
same
bring
as
people
the,
in, during the weekdays and during the off season, here's 3 things you
Yeah,
need
so-
to do to
I think it's
move
gonna
that
be a
forward.
multifaceted kind of situation.
is.
That's where it gets kind of,
I know.
you kind of, like,
Right.
what I do is I, find like 2 or 3 things I think will work, and I
Yeah.
take both of them, and I figure out which one works the best, and
Yeah.
works down that. Yeah, you can't always,
I don't know what
you can think you know how it's gonna work in your head, but it's not always gonna work that way. I think the hotels are really
Go
good
look
asset.
at the Hyatt.
Big time. To
Especially
me,
as
that's the
simple as having
most
a
important
calendar.
part of
New
this strategy.
room,
If
very
we can come
high.
out of this strategy with a way to work with the hotels and the restaurants.
Well, hey,
and
thanks for
everybody to
your
come up
good
with
work today. It was
packages
great.
To bring people in during the off season
No.
and during weekdays. Like, to me, I will feel like, wow, we really accomplished something.
Well, you
We
would
could-
think
we
that
can do
they
something
would,
like that
Like,
out there.
are you saying
that
like
the
a,
manufacturer of the chair would be a little bit more
situation where
creative
it's
with optional racking.
get a certain event or something like that, we can get a bunch of hotel rooms booked?
Exactly,
Ah.
And I
exactly.
don't know if they do it now, but there's like certain people at events, do they have on their website, like you can click and book hotel rooms? Like, is that, how like you go to a trade show
Yeah,
and you're out of town, so you just click on a link, it takes you to the booking agent to book the hotel room in that area.
yeah.
So I don't know if that's,
That's a good,
Something- I mean,
that's a
that's
simple
way
idea,
out
like,
there, yeah.
and to add it, not simple.
Because
Yeah.
currently
here,
we still
but
don't
yeah.
have any of the events on the calendar for the convention center.
Right.
So
Oh,
that's really
Peter's
big.
thing.
I know
I know,
that-
I know.
From what I heard, it's a security
That's
issue
from day
possibly, but it
one.
maybe, is that,
When
I mean,
Kathy was
that's
chair.
what's been mentioned, that it would be a security issue if it wasn't advertised, but I don't think that's really,
It's not, it's just, I don't understand.
yeah.
I don't, but maybe that's part of the recommendation, so.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I'm a big fan of finding things that make you money that you don't have to pay for, and doing calendar is very simple.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, hey, thanks for coming, guys. Like I said, we needed to keep that quorum too. Well, it's always good to have you guys here and your insights, but good to keep the quorum.
Richard will do a better job of
You did great.
talking I'm so bad.
No, you did a great job. Hey,
was
so do you want to add that as an action item? What you and Carl were just talking about as far as the sharing, like having an event calendar that can be shared with hotels
Yeah,
to
I
go
think
through some
Peter
of that?
brought it up, so it was part of the, again, so, yeah.
Unless I've had like
Yeah,
3 or 4
please, I mean,
beers
because,
of gold.
but I would put it in the context
Probably
of
ground
Peter
upon him
bringing
doing
it up,
that
because that
today.
was during the official
Yeah.
meeting, yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it, yeah,
Yep.
we'll be in touch. Yeah, thanks, Kyle, look forward to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the work on this, I mean, again, of course. If absolutely nothing comes, I think this is outstanding.
Well, I try and get the numbers.
I love it.
I think this number is low.
I do as well.
I went to the opening of the Fort Miles Special Event Space, and the Secretary of State used a number which was closer to I think it was 365.
All right, guys, I got a bolt, so we'll